Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Katarina, and I'm training manager here at UX Academy. First, we would like to thank you all for joining us today on this presentation to learn what UX design is all about. Please now drop a message here in the chat and let us know where you're watching us from. What city, what country? We would love to know. It's great to see people from all over the world. So please don't be shy. Just drop us a message and let us know where you're coming from. So this is our agenda for today. But before we go to the main part of the presentation, we would like to tell you a little bit about UX Academy, the company who is bringing you today's expert session. So we're a London-based company and we run online live evening UX design courses. Oh, hello from London. Hi, you Julia from United States. Thank you for joining us. Hi. Hello from Sri Lanka. Hi. Thank you all for writing the message in the chat box. It's always great to see who is watching us. So let's move on. As you can see here, we deliver our courses live on Zoom with a live teacher in small groups. Here on these screenshots, you can see some of our last courses. We have about 10 students and one course instructor. And we have been around for over 5 years, and we taught over 1,000 students. And we taught students from all around the world, from many companies, and here on the screen you can just see some of the companies. Now I'll tell you a little bit about the tools we use in our courses. So for communication, we use Slack. If you join our course, you will be put in 3 Slack groups, one with your team, because you will be working on a project, one with the client, because you would need to communicate with the client of the project that you would be working on, and you would have a general Slack channel with everyone in. Also, we upload slides and course recordings to Google Drive. So if you were not able to watch some parts of the course or you want to rewatch the course, you will be able to, because we keep recordings and slides of each course we deliver. Also, you will use Figma, which is industry standard tool for prototyping. And as I already said, we use Zoom to deliver our courses. So I will just tell you briefly about our payment plans. At UX Academy, we offer 2 flexible payment plans to make our courses even more affordable and accessible. That's Noma and Klarna. And if you'd like to learn more, please go to our website, click our courses, then payment plans. And now it's time for what all of you guys have been waiting for. I will invite Jennifer to join me here on the panel, and she will take over the session. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're so excited to have you here with us.
Hi, Katerina. Thank you for the introduction.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'll talk about 5 things you should know when you're starting out your career as a UX designer. So before I start, let me tell you a bit about myself. I studied cognitive science, where I focused on psychology and neuroscience, and I was doing quite a bit of research at the time. I then switched to going into, I started as an internship in UX research and design, and then switched to full-time into UX design. I worked a few years in Montreal and at Desjardins, a big bank where I was focusing on very complex tools that could help users better manage their finances and their mortgage. And a few months ago, I moved to the UK, and now I'm freelancing as a UX designer and also working at a design agency. So today, the point of today is basically just to give you an overview of a few things that you could experience at the start of your career and a few tips on how to make it easier. So, expected tasks as a UX designers, then how to collaborate with colleagues, imposter syndrome, how to start out your portfolio, and then engaging with the UX community. Expected task as a UX designers. So, daily tasks can generally vary a lot based on the company from company because if you're a UX designer in one company, don't really expect to have the same task as a UX designer in another company. It's still quite ambiguous what our role is and what the design thinking and designing process in general is. So every company kind of has their own way of functioning, and it also really depends on your collaborators. So these two diagrams are kind of comparing the daily tasks that and then we did a lot of research and a lot of analysis that was spent on like business needs and analytics and architecture and user flows. On the other side, on the right diagram, you can see that most of my time is spent just on high fidelity mockups, which is not something I did at all in the previous role. And then I'm barely ever in meetings, and I focus a lot less on low fidelity wireframes, and user tests aren't really something we do on a general basis. So this is just basically to show you that you won't always have the same tasks from role to role, and even if you do, the repartition of them might not be the same. And that can really impact your day to day. There's three tasks that you should always usually be doing as a designer. Wireframing, obviously, either low or high fidelity prototype. Secondary research, which is basically just going on your own and seeing what the competitors are doing, getting some inspiration from online resources, reading blogs, etc. Whenever you have an issue, that can really help to guide you to figure out a solution and kind of give you a lot more inspiration. And finally, collaboration. Even though it could be a big part of your day, or maybe just you have a meeting once a week, there's always some sort of collaboration in your work. And other than that, it really varies from company to company. So it's important to know what you're signing up for when you're looking for jobs. You should really read the description of the job post carefully. The title themselves don't really mean much. Sometimes you'll see it called UX design, UX UI design, product design. Even sometimes it'll be UX research, and it's still the role you're looking for. The title really is very ambiguous, and it's usually not experts that are putting this on. So read the job description carefully and read the tasks to see what you'll be doing. If you are in the interview process, also feel free to ask them who you'll be working with. Is there going to be product designers, product owners? Are you going to be working with other designers? Is there a researcher? That'll give you kind of a sense of the team you'll be working in, how much time you'll be spending with them. And a better position, a better idea of your position in that team. The design process of that company is also very important. What time do they include you in the UX design? Are they expecting you to also do research? Are they also expecting you to be involved in the analysis and the business need, or are they more focused on the UI, just high fidelity mockups? That can also really change your day to day. So make sure that all of these are clear before you sign up or start a job, and have a look, if you want to have a look on job platforms and kind of see the tasks that you can be expected to do. But like I said before, there's usually three very main ones, and then the others can just vary a lot. So next is collaborating with colleagues. So There's many types of collaborators you can have. You could have to deal with all of them. You could have to deal with just one. This is the list of people that I've had to deal with over the years. So clients, product owners, business analysts, all types of developers. Maybe you have to deal with the design directors. You might have to work with other UX, UI designers and writers. You might be doing that yourself. And then on rarer occasion, but it does happen that you have to team up with a marketing and legal and accessibility expert based on what you're designing, just to make sure that everything is clear and it won't get you into legal issues and it still follows the brand. So it can really, there's a very large variety of people that you can collaborate with. How it usually goes is that you will start, everything starts and ends with your collaborators. So you'll start usually the meeting, even if you just have one client or if you're a big team, you will determine the business needs and the next steps and the functionalities you have to design in a team. Once your priorities are clear, you're going to go and work on your own, do your own wireframing, your own mock-ups, brainstorming sessions, secondary research, as I said, and start sketching things out, each on your own corner. At one point, you'll have some specific questions. You might have to go to somebody to ask them, clarify some different use cases. And once you're done with your design, you will go back to your team and present your idea. The final decision, what's really important about this is that the final decision about what gets produced isn't really up to you. It's up to the team. So you need to be able to explain and sell your ideas to the team. If you have the best design, but you can't explain it well, and people have doubts about it, they're going to ask you to do something else. Sometimes for good reason, sometimes not. But it is a lot of work because you need to be able to explain your ideas and basically sell them to the team and people you're collaborating with. So collaboration is extremely important in all aspects of your work. But it's not always straightforward, unfortunately. Hopefully you'll never have to deal with this, but there's not a single UX designer I've met that hasn't. So it might happen at one point in your career where even your close colleagues won't always know what UX design is. And it's quite difficult to try and explain what UX design is to someone that isn't really tech savvy. Most often it ends up that they think it's just delivering high fidelity mockups and putting squares into boxes the way that you are told. But there's a lot more to UX than that. You need to understand the users. You need to understand the use cases, the business needs. You need to understand how all of the interactions are going to come together, create user flows, architecture diagrams, do research. And finally, after all of that, you do get the final mockup. But a lot of that is lost when you're presenting that information to your teammates and they never get to see it. It can cause communication and friction issues between people if you're not really aligned about what you're supposed to be presenting to them. And that doesn't create the best environment for working, obviously. So there's a few things that can really start you off on the right foot and that you should just keep in mind so it'll make your life easier and happier, basically. Sometimes you'll have to have patience to explain things through. So if you just show your mock-up, it won't always be enough. You need to show how you got to your conclusions. What did you try out? Andrew and Anna, we lost our presentation.
I will have that fixed in a second. We apologize. It will be added. Just 1 second. Thank you all for your patience. I will have that fixed in a second. We apologize. It will be so sorry. Okay. So if you want, you can scroll to your slide.
Perfect. There we go.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Yeah, so where was I? Yes, you need to have a patient to explain your process. So how did you get to your conclusion? What did you try? What didn't work? Why is the version you're showing them the best version? When you're with more senior people, you won't have to do this as much. But with people that aren't really accustomed to UX, it might show them a bit of your work process and give them a better idea of what you do. Even if you are working with senior people and you end up just showing them the final versions that you think is the best, keep all of your work on the side and neatly, because when you're starting to discuss it, you might have to refer back to it. Another point is to always have a visual with you. It can be wireframes, low fidelity, high fidelity, storyboards, screenshots of things you found inspiring online. But it is very helpful to have a visual with you whenever you want to show and talk about a certain point, or if you have certain questions. Without it, a lot of people get lost. More often than not, people are very visual and need it to follow along. And when it does get frustrating, keep in mind that you're all working towards the same goal. So even if you don't have the same approach, you're still trying to create the best product and experience for the users. Even if you don't have the same approach and methodology, as long as you keep that in mind, you'll be able to find a compromise. The most important is that whenever you're presenting your designs, comments, questions, and disagreements about it are very normal, no matter what experience level you're at. Whether you're a senior or a junior, people are going to ask questions about your design and you're going to have to explain to it. So it's not because your design isn't good or better than others, it's just part of the work. And a senior person might just be able to explain things better and it might just go smoother, but that just comes with experience. It's still very much present no matter where you are at in your career. And that brings us to imposter syndrome. So I won't go into too much details about imposter syndrome because there's literally hours and hours long of talks about imposter syndrome. But I did want to go over it briefly. This definition is basically a long definition to say that imposter syndrome is when you think you're not doing a good job and you feel as an imposter, even though there's evidence that you are doing a good job and you are succeeding. In UX, like I said, collaboration can be very amazing, but it can also cause a lot of doubts, especially if you don't know how it works and you're not expecting it when you first start out. Like I said, you can often be questioned about your design. You are asked to sell and explain your works every time. And a lot of people may point out use cases you didn't take into consideration. Sorry. And all of that can lead to questioning yourself and your design. The one thing you should remember is it's not personal. It really is part of the work, no matter your level of experience, because you did all the research, you did all of your analysis, but your collaborators didn't see that. They just see the final visual and they had maybe another idea of how it was supposed to work or another way of seeing it. And they might have different use cases. They can make good points that sometimes you'll have to take into consideration. Sometimes you'll take it into consideration and decide that they weren't right or that your design needs improvements. Either way, it can go either way, but you'll have to collaborate and make compromises about it. Finally, UX is an iterative process. No one expects you to have the perfect solution right from the first wireframe. It really is, you start low, you show it, you try things out, you see what the developers have to say, what the business and product owners have to say. You might come up with an amazing solution, but the developers it just might not be doable in the time frame that you have. So you're going to have to go and simplify it. So the perfect solution, never from the first start, and you're not expected to. So yeah. For portfolios, what is a portfolio? It's supposed to represent your work. It should showcase your projects and show your methodology, your approach, your design process, and your final results. It can be in any format that you want. It can be a PDF, a website, an offline presentation. As long as it's easy to share and represents your work, find a format that works for you, and that's what's important. For a good overview about like how to do a portfolio, there's Google UX Design portfolio tips, which are amazing, and they'll give you a good overview of what to include and how to format it, basically. There's a lot of these online though, so I would recommend going and going over a few once you reach that stage. Portfolio take a lot of work, and it's not really something you think about usually when you're in a job and comfortable and not really looking elsewhere. But you should really keep your portfolio up to date. But let's be realistic, because that's not going to happen. I was told by like 4 other people to keep your portfolio up to date, and every UX designer I know was told to keep their portfolio up to date, and it just never happens. But there's other tips to remember that can make it a lot easier when you do finally get the motivation. So first, like I said, just check out articles and other portfolio to really understand what it is and how to make it. And take pictures of group meetings, your design board, your workshop. Keep low fidelity and high fidelity wireframes of everything you've worked on, obviously in line with the confidentiality of your workplace. And any snippets or copies of brainstorming session drafts, drawing documents, anything you work on, really just keep a clean copy of it. Ideally, you would try and do maybe just one project into a portfolio so that you understand the format that you want. And if you do one, you'll also understand all of the information that you need. So then when you do start working on other projects, you'll be able to document those and keep proof of what you've worked on just more efficiently. That is still quite a lot of work, but it is really necessary for any time you want to showcase your work, whether it is to get a webinar like this, or to find a new job, or if you want to start freelancing, or if you just want to have a conversation with another UX designer. It is very useful to have at least one project. Finally, engaging with the UX community. So UX is growing exponentially. It's a very quick field. It's developing very quickly, and there's a very high turnaround about all of the best practices and all of the information. The amazing part is that it's also a tight-knit community. There's a lot of conferences, no matter where you're at. There's a lot of conferences and events. After COVID, a lot of them are virtual. Some of them are starting to be again in person. And it can make a big impact on your career overall. It's the best way to keep your skills and your knowledge up to date with what's going on in the field, and also just develop your skills in general. If you're starting out, you can also meet a lot of great people to get advice from them and make connections. If big events aren't your thing, which is totally fine, you can always contact people directly on LinkedIn or via email if you have it, that have either interesting or similar career path, and ask kind of for some guidance, or if they have time to chat with you. Some people are very open to that, and it's actually worked for quite a few people that I know, and even worked for me. And it can make a really amazing difference if you find a mentor to who you can rely on and share your experiences with. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but becoming part of the community can make you feel more motivated and really enjoy your work and discussing things with people that are just as passionate. And you'll also learn a lot from your peers. So that is all I had for today. Thank you everyone for listening. Andriana, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So thank you, Jennifer. So hi everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, for your presentation. So my name is Andriana, and I'm a part of UX Academy team. And now I will be we are going to open Q&A section, so feel free to ask any questions that you want. Don't be shy, just ask whatever interests you. And until we're waiting, I want to ask you, Jennifer, so when I heard your presentation, I was wondering, what do you find most challenging in your work, actually?
Definitely the collaboration, because there's a lot of moving pieces. Based on every project, you can have to deal with other people, and every person has their own way of understanding information, and you kind of have to adapt to them. And every person also has their own way of working, and you have to adapt to them. And that takes a lot of practice. And sometimes it can be amazing, and sometimes it can be the worst part. And it just really depends on the projects you're on. Yeah. So I would still say that is the most challenging thing I have to face.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it is also the most fun. I just want to add, it is the most fun for me as well.
That's great. I mean, yeah. So we have a lot of questions, actually. I will show it to you. So Alex asked, which is the best platform to publish a portfolio?
There isn't really a best one. There's a lot of different ones. There's WordPress, there's Webflow. You can go for easier platforms for Wix. That's all online ones. There's also Behance. Yeah, it's a Dribble. Sorry. There's also Dribble if you just want to show like snippets of your work, but that's not like a full portfolio. That's just an addition. I would say find what is easiest for you to use and what you could, let's say, update and you're most comfortable with. But whether you use WordPress or Webflow, it really doesn't matter. The person won't know. I found Webflow way too difficult for me. It takes a bit more knowledge into coding, while WordPress takes a lot less. Wix is a lot easier, but I found it a bit less professional. So I didn't really like their templates.
Yeah. Okay, we have next questions. Can you guys share this presentation? Actually, I can answer that. So in our website, uxacademy.com, you can go through our webinars and you can sign up for this video. And in that way, you can get this presentation, actually. So next question. Julia, what tips do you have for learning new platforms? Also, is there things that you recommend doing outside of bootcamp to make getting a job more accessible after graduating?
Mm-hmm. So if by platform you mean kind of like Figma and Sketch, Figma is definitely the most popular one. I would say just do YouTube videos. The best thing is honestly practice. You can take designs you see online, or just Figma has a lot of like pre-made templates. You can take them and like break them apart and try to recreate them, and that way you'll learn how to do it as well. And that is actually that's really what helped me at first as well. And Figma also has really great tutorials on their new functionalities that are being used. But it does come down to practice with new platforms. And the more you practice, the more you'll get a hang of it, because you'll try to do different things. So at first I would say just try and copy designs you see, and that'll get you started really well. And the second part of your question, what was the second part? Where was it?
Let me show you.
Oh yeah, outside of boot camps. When you're at an interview stage, it's always about your work. There's two parts to the interview. Obviously, the more basic interview questions, like where do you see yourself in 5 years, why UX, etc. I don't really have any tips for that. I am not the expert on that. But for the UX part, it's about your work. If you don't have anything, what's very useful is just, even if you don't have like real projects, you can do just mock projects. Take a website or an application that you don't like, that you think has like some UX issues, or that you think could just do better, and then take some screenshots, explain what they are, redesign it, and that'll give you even more practice on Figma or Sketch. Redesign it and explain why you redesigned it that way. So even if you don't have, so that'll give you more practical skills to talk about in interviews.
That is great. We have a lot of questions. So would you like next one?
Yeah.
So, Kit, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Thanks for the session. Need some more tips for cracking interviews, as most people ask why you don't use this method. So what can we tell them?
So the final result, I would say, isn't as important as your thought process. If they ask you why you didn't use this method, then just explain it. If it's because most times it's going to be, well, the developers had 2 weeks to develop this, so what I designed was just not possible to do in 2 weeks. That's totally a valid answer. Sometimes it can just be, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the time, the product owner wasn't convinced because of XYZ. Whatever the reason is, it is a valid reason. So if you thought that what you did was, if it was like part of the options, if you have like different versions of a design, for example, and you chose this one, you can just be like, well, that was an option I was considering, but when I was looking at it, I thought that it wasn't consistent with the rest of the design, or I thought that what I had was just better for the user based on Facebook doing the same thing. Or I saw it on Airbnb, and since Airbnb is so user-friendly, I thought it was the right way to go to try and mimic things that users are already accustomed to, which is very fair. You don't want to create new patterns either. So I would say the end result isn't as important as just your thought process and the methodology you want to approach.
That's a great answer, actually. So the next question is, what would be your best single piece of advice you would give to someone who is looking to start freelancing, who is new to the field? This is a great question, actually.
Yeah. That's actually quite difficult to say. I would say your connections are your best options. That is how most freelancing usually get their start, is through their connection. They know clients, and then it's word of mouth. If you try to like apply on the online website, it is harder, because if you don't have any experience, you have less work to show for it. So it would be like, start small, go bigger, and try to make as many connections as you want through different ways. What you can also do is, well, if you are set on 100% freelancing, that can be more challenging. You could also find a part-time in somewhere else to get you started and to just help you sustain yourself while you get more clients. If you have a full-time, it is very hard to freelance at the same time. It's too many projects at once. But if you do just part-time somewhere, it could help you manage that better.
Yeah. Next question. How can I find a first job if I don't really have UX design experience for more than 1 year?
Yeah, that really is
problem.
It is a very recurring problem. It's like,
yeah,
you need experience to get a job, but you need a job to get experience. It is very difficult. I would say, again, obviously look for more junior roles and try to diversify who you're trying to work for. Design agencies tend to be more open to juniors because they will be very open to like training them. and building from there. You can, again, try to go to, if you have in-person events, you can always meet people there that might be recruiting, that might put you in contact with somebody, that puts you in contact with somebody. You can contact people via LinkedIn if you think that they have something interesting or that they could help you. So really try to use your network. And if you still have some experience, then try to highlight it. Try to really highlight everything that you've learned, because if you have any projects, that's still really good just to show what your projects are, and try to work on your portfolio and what you have to show on those process. Yeah.
Okay. So next question. I want to switch my career as a researcher from designer. What things I need to put more focus?
Okay, so if you're a designer now and you want to go into research, there's actually a lot of debate in the field currently about that, because a lot of people say you have to be a researcher to go into research, but it's really very ambiguous. There's a lot of jobs that require you to be a designer and also a researcher. So if you can find one of those jobs and be able to do both, it'll be easier to transfer within the company if you're already doing the research part. Because especially in smaller companies, because as the company grow, they might want to hire somebody more specific to be design, and then you could be able to switch over. I think that's like the easiest way I would see it, is just to find, there are a lot of jobs, especially startups, where they expect you to do everything, including the user research. And I think that could give you the experience you need.
Great. So next question is short. How many cases should I put in my portfolio?
3 to 5 is the usual rule of thumb. Don't put all of them. Put the ones you're most interested in. Diversify if you can, showing different skill sets. If they want to see more after that, you'll be able to show it in the interview process if they ask you for another one. But usually online, or what you show them and send them, 3 to 5 is more than enough.
Okay. Well, next question is quite interesting, I guess. I have just finished my PhD in developmental neuroscience, and I would like to start a career in UX. I have no previous experience. What would you recommend as a first step?
That's a really good question. I mean, you have a PhD, which is very impressive. It's in development neuroscience, so it is somewhat related as well. There's like multiple ways to go about it. You could do a certificate online to show your interest in UX. I think the most difficult thing you'll have to face is that, well, you're overqualified because you have a PhD, but you also have no UX experience. So are you a junior? Are you a mid-weight? That's quite difficult to say. If you could go into UX research, I think that might be the easiest path for you, since a PhD usually requires you to do a thesis. So I'd recommend trying out some certification, and then finding people in the field to talk to. I'm sure UX programs are quite recent. A lot of people used to come from very different backgrounds, either graphic design or psychology or PhD or anything, or like architecture. I would say try finding somebody on LinkedIn that had a similar path to you and ask him that question or her that question. And it'll give you a better idea, because it is a very specific, difficult question to answer, honestly. Everyone has their own way of going about it, but there is definitely, like I said, a lot of people come from different backgrounds. So you just have to manage somebody to find to guide you a bit more specifically on your case.
Okay, we have next question about portfolio. It's a little bit easier one. So, CD, in a portfolio, is it better to make it visually appealing or more text-based, research-focused? How does it work for big case studies that include a full rebranding work?
Okay. Definitely visually focused is good. Don't take too much time on making it like the most pretty website ever, unless you're going for like something very specific where you just want to be specialized in UI or specialized in graphic design. It doesn't have to be the most pretty site, but definitely include as many visual aspects as you can. So like if you have pictures of like your working session with people love that. Any brainstorming, design thinking workshop you've had, your low fidelity wireframe, high fidelity wireframe, your research process. Did you do research and did it impact your design, and how did it impact your design? If it's for a rebranding work, I would say you have to show what it was initially, show your analysis, and then everything you've done for it, and then show the final result. So like how it was before and how it is now and what makes it better. The link I sent, I showed you like the Google UX tips, goes over that very well in detail. And there's actually a lot of very specific websites just on portfolio building. It's a very difficult process, but also very rewarding just to see what you've done on paper. And yeah, find a methodology that works for you and apply it. You can do trial and error, but usually as many visual elements as you can, and try to show your methodology from start to finish. If you did research, if you did analysis, if you did design thinking, tell it as a story that could just interest people, and get them to get to the end of the story. One thing that I really liked about in a portfolio is the key takeaways at the end. I actually had that. I actually had quite a few good comments on mine where I had the last few key takeaways of that project. Yeah, if you can find something as well, like a personalization or an element that can make you stand apart as well, that's always good.
Great. We have one more question from CD. So, how do you deal with clients that expect you to code the website or the design you provide? It seems that as soon as I say that I do not code, clients show disappointment. That is really common.
Yeah, I don't code either. If the client expects you to code and you're not a coder, if you want to learn coding, that could be one aspect, but I just tell them I don't code, you have to hire somebody else. It really is like, if you're not a coder, you're not a coder. A client can't just demand something from you. If you don't want them to drop you, we'll just kind of explain what you focus on. Again, like I said, some clients might not even know what UX work, right? Like they like the idea of being user friendly, but then actually they just want somebody to code the website. So I would say reiterate what you bring to the table and the skills that you bring and how you make it easier for them. Because at the end, a good UX really saves them a lot of time. And if you have the design ready, you can just focus on like, well, I've spent a lot of time refining your design. I can't also code it. That's not one of my skills. But if you do hire a coder, it's going to be a lot faster for them to code because they have my design and they just have to code what they see. And yeah, clarify that at the beginning, I would say, just to avoid confusions.
Do you think I have questions since we don't still have any more? So feel free to ask questions. We have like 15 minutes left, so don't be shy. Ask whatever you want. We'll be here. So I want to ask you about coding. So is it client's fault or is it UX designer's fault that client doesn't know that we do not code, for example?
That's kind of a Pandora box.
Yeah, that's why.
I would say UX is just it's an old field, but it's very newly popular. And a lot of clients like the idea of being user friendly without really knowing what it is. I had a client that didn't know what it was, but he kind of had an idea, but he flat out said, I don't know what UX is. I'm looking towards you to like kind of guide me on what it does. And at one point he did ask me, do you code? And I'm like, no, I don't code. But what I can do for you is I can determine all of the functionalities you want, test out different things, see out which one would be best for your users. And then whichever coder comes along, he'll just have to code the final design and it'll take a lot less time for them. I don't think it's anybody's fault. It's just that it's growing so fast. People are still learning how to collaborate and how to integrate it in their process. And there's no one right way currently. There's a lot of like different theories and different approaches. But people are just still learning how to deal with it because it is growing so fast that it's not there's it's when it happens like that so quickly, it's very difficult to just find the right process from the start. And some people might still be focused on the old ways and not really know what it is. I mean, before you go into UX design, you might think that UI design and let's say graphic design might be the same. You might confuse UX and UI. I think it's totally normal. It's not your field. If you're a business analyst, I still don't know what business analysts fully do on a day-to-day basis, but I still know what to ask them. So it's just, I think the most important part is just to open up the conversation and be transparent about what you do and what they expect.
Great. I learned something new today. So, do you guys have any more questions? Come on. It's nothing scary. If you're interested in something, it's great opportunity to ask. I will be waiting like a little bit and then we will wrap up this session. So, Jennifer, do you want something to add in the end while we're waiting?
I think I've talked so much. I don't really know what else to add. Yeah, if you guys aren't going into UX or like you're starting to think about going into UX, it's a great field. Personally, I love it. What has your there's a new question. What has your biggest UX challenge been? Well, I feel like on an interview with that question, but it's a really good question.
Thank you.
One of the like I said, like I would say there's two. One is like obviously imposter syndrome, especially when you're starting out and nobody's there to tell you that it's normal. Especially since I started out in a team where I didn't have any mentor or anybody to check my design with. And when you put something in front of a big team and they kind of just question you a lot and bring all of these extreme cases and you have to like kind of sell your idea, that is very challenging, especially if you don't know that it's just normal, no matter whether you're a junior or not. It can really aggravate, at least to me. The other one I would say is during my internship where I had to work for blockchain. And blockchain is a very specific technology. And I just spent having 3 weeks with the developers learning what blockchain was. The problem when a technology is very restrictive or when you have, let's say, time restriction or something it just can't be developed properly. Even though your design might be amazing, if you don't have the time, you're still going to have to like kind of reduce it to something that is less good, but there has to be this compromise between the resources that you have and what you can actually accomplish and your design. And it can also be quite hard to be like, all right, well, I know this is really good, but now I'm going to have to do something less good because it's just the way it is. But you get used to it, and compromises can often be very good. And as long as something is, as long as you have a minimal viable product, you're always going to come back to it and improve it later on. So it is part of the process. Yeah, I don't know if that answers, but
yeah, great answer actually. So we have time for one more question, and I will show it to you. Instead of hiring a UX designer, don't you think some clients will just hire a web developer to create their projects from them rather than getting a UX designer and also getting a web or app designer?
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are totally going to do that. And you can't really force them to change their mind. Some people don't see the important in UX or what we do yet. And if you kind of get a client that wants you to be a web developer instead of a UX, I would say you have the wrong client, because he's going to focus on the wrong things, and that's not what you do.
Yeah. So yeah, actually it's Pandora's box as well. If you think about it. Well, we have one more. Let's see if it's question or statement, and we will be done. I have got a 50 slides presentation on rebranding and UX UI design mobile apps. If I talk people through it, they are really engaged, but more senior designers told me recruiters won't go through it.
I would say have a cut down version. 50 slides can be a lot. So I would say have a cut down version that you can either send or present. And if they have more questions about it, then you can go to the bigger presentation. But definitely 50 slides, when some people can see that, they're just going to be very intimidated and be like, okay, I have to sit through 50 slides. If you're telling me it's 50 slides, but in like 20 minutes, that's still okay. So it just also depends on how long it takes, but definitely have a shorter version to start with. And if they have more questions, then you can move on to the more complete version. Or you can also ask at the beginning of an interview, being like, well, do you want to see the briefer version that takes about 10-15 minutes, or should I go really more into details that takes 20 to 30 minutes? It's also a very valid question to ask, and then they'll just tell you what they're most interested in.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you all for all those questions. We don't have time to answer them all, but you can ask us anything on our website, uxacademy.com, or just comment it below. So we will gladly answer your questions. It's time. Unfortunately, it's time to wrap up this session since we don't have any time left. I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening or day, wherever you are, and I hope this presentation was helpful to you. So if you have any questions, as I said, feel free to ask them on the website or just in comments. And thank you all for coming, as I said. So it's time to say goodbye and see you on our next free webinar. So bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.